NATO said it would increase its military presence in the Baltic Sea to protect against critical infrastructure damage.
EU Commissioner for Enlargement Marta Koz says any enlargement of the bloc will be based on merit.
TikTok users are flocking to a Chinese social media app as a potential ban of TikTok looms in the US. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte announced the alliance is launching a new mission to protect undersea cables in the Baltic Sea region. His announcement comes following a string of incidents in the Baltic that have heightened concerns about possible Russian activity in the region, including the suspected sabotage of undersea cables.
This military activity is part of our ongoing effort to enhance maritime presence and monitoring of key areas for our alliance. It will involve a range of assets, including frigates and maritime patrol aircraft, among others, and will enhance our vigilance in the Baltic.
Rutte said NATO adversaries must know the alliance will not accept attacks on its critical infrastructure, with Estonia's Prime Minister adding that plans were in place for the Baltics to be cut free from the Russian energy sector.
Finland has hosted the first NATO Baltic Sea summit to bolster defences against hostile acts, such as attacks on critical infrastructure in the Baltic Sea. On Christmas Day, Finnish authorities seized an oil tanker suspected to be responsible for damaging undersea communications cables. Over 95% of the world's data is transported through the cables. Russia and China are regularly accused of sabotaging them as part of hybrid war. Finnish President Alexander Stubb told Euronews his country is well prepared, but overall Europe needs to do more.
There's a lot of malintent coming from the Russian Federation at this particular moment, and it's a new normal that we have to live with. And of course, in a country like Finland, which has 1,300 kilometers of border with Russia, we're quite used to this. So we're coping with it, we're staying calm, cool and collected. We take necessary measures, including joining NATO. We take necessary measures, including confiscating vessels. So, we're quite relaxed about it, really.
Because Mark Rutte isn't. He said that while we're not in a kinetic war now and we are safe, in 4 to 5 years, we won't be unless Europe steps up on security and defence.
Well, the Secretary General of NATO is concerned about the whole alliance. As President of Finland, I'm concerned about the state of our defence. And I have to say that we never dropped our guard. We still have compulsory military service. We have 900,000 men and women in reserves, 280,000 that we can mobilize at wartime. We have 62 F-18s. We have soon 64 F-35s. We have long-range missiles, land, air, and sea. And we have the largest artillery in Europe together with Poland. So I sleep my nights quite well, and I hope that our allies do as well, because they can be quite assured that we play our part in the alliance.
But you're also an expert on the EU, having spent a lot of time there. What would you urge Europe to do for the sake of Finland and 27 member states altogether to ensure that Europe will be safe?
Well, I think there are a few things that we need to do. First is we need to hike up our defense expenditure, because our holiday from history is now over. So it is in our vested self-interest to promote and spend more on defense, unfortunately, of course. Secondly, we need to pool our defenses better. So we need to do orders together in order to bring down the price of them. And then, of course, the third thing we need to do is to work very closely with our closest ally, the United States.
Donald Trump has said that he would like to take over Greenland. So it's not a great start, is it?
Well, we'll take one step at a time, and I think the sort of calm response from the Prime Minister of Denmark is the correct one.
Okay, President Stubb, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
The EU's Commissioner for Enlargement has said any expansion of the bloc will be based on merit rather than geopolitics and must serve existing member states as well as future ones.
There will be no geopolitical discount. The enlargement process remains merit-based. As I told you on November 7, I will walk the talk about European values. The rule of law and fundamental values will continue to be cornerstone of the EU's enlargement policy and the foundations of a reformed and enlarged union in the future.
With the start of a new year, EU members will be watching the progress made in accession negotiations, particularly with the likes of Ukraine, Georgia and Moldova, all of whom were granted EU candidate status after Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Formal accession negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova began in June last year, a landmark move which signalled a vote of confidence in Ukraine's future in Europe. But both countries still have a long path ahead of them, with Moldova under increasing Russian influence and Ukraine facing hostility from member states such as Slovakia and Hungary. Meanwhile, Georgia's accession is likely to remain on hold as the EU struggles to reach a consensus on the ruling Georgian Dream Party, which faces accusations of being both anti-democratic and pro-Russian.
France's new Prime Minister François Bayrou announced the renegotiation of a contested plan, raising the retirement age from 62 to 64. Bayrou aimed to please all sides and avoid a no-confidence vote during a much-awaited key policy speech. But moments after, the far left filed a motion of no confidence against Bayrou's government to be examined on Thursday. Bayrou urgently needs to pass a budget bill for 2025 to help reduce France's deficit.
More than 150 Nobel and World Food Prize winners have written an open letter calling for an increased commitment to new food distribution efforts in the face of a global hunger crisis. The letter, which emerged after a meeting of food accessibility experts last year, says around 700 million people are now food insecure, a number likely to rise with climate change and population growth unless efforts are made to grow more and different kinds of food. Despite the gloomy outlook, however, experts remain hopeful that the crisis can be avoided if people take the necessary actions. These include an increase in research funding and information sharing, along with more innovative production methods such as enhancing photosynthesis in essential crops, developing crops less reliant on chemical fertilizers, and lengthening the shelf life of fruit and vegetables.
A ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas may be close to coming to fruition as negotiators meet on Tuesday seeking to finalize its details. Mediators reportedly gave Israel and Hamas a final draft of the agreement after a midnight breakthrough. If successful, it would lead to the biggest release of Israeli hostages since the early days of the war. Meanwhile, Israeli strikes on Gaza remain intense. Several strikes hit areas throughout the Gaza Strip overnight and early on Tuesday, killing dozens. A growing number of Israeli soldiers have started to speak out against Israeli conduct in Gaza and are refusing to continue serving if a ceasefire is not secured. They say they saw or did things that crossed ethical lines. At the same time, around 1,000 Israelis demonstrated against a ceasefire deal in Jerusalem, shouting slogans against humanitarian aid delivery to Gaza, prisoner exchanges, or relinquishing conquered territory. They say the government should release the hostages only through victory over Hamas.
As the threat of a TikTok ban looms, some US TikTok users are flocking to Chinese social media app Xiaohongshu, making it the top downloaded app in the US. Users landed on the app called Little Red Book in English as an alternative to TikTok, with some saying they specifically picked the Chinese app to protest the TikTok ban.
Today, it has grown into a popular platform for young people to share practical tips or tutorials on various topics like beauty, fashion, fitness, adventure, or even career advice. The app has over 300 million monthly active users, and most of them are young female living in the big cities.
The US Supreme Court is due to rule on whether TikTok must divest from its Chinese parent company or be banned in the US over security concerns. Masses of TikTok users joined the Chinese app using hashtags such as TikTok refugee.
Since yesterday, we have seen many new posts in English calling themselves the TikTok refugees, and the reaction from the Chinese users have been mixed. Some believe this is a great way the Chinese culture get to a global audience, while some worries this will be a cultural invasion and it might have an impact on the censorship.
Little Red Book has become the top downloaded free app on the US App Store, but it is not clear if the app will serve as a sustainable replacement for TikTok.
Freezing temperatures have brought heavy snow to the mountainous areas of southeastern Europe. Albania has closed 77 schools after heavy snowfall cut off several villages. The military is helping to clear roads and carry out emergency services in some areas. Bulgaria, North Macedonia, and Italy also issued weather alerts and closed schools due to heavy snowfall, which is expected to cause disruptions throughout the week. In lower altitude areas, the cold temperatures have also brought flood risks. Sicily issued a yellow alert on Tuesday due to heavy thunderstorms for the entire island. France has also issued an orange flood warning in the north, and there are avalanche alerts across the Western Alps. Cold air coming from northeastern Europe has brought low temperatures throughout the rest of the continent as well, expected to last all week.